Jeddies, and you join me again in my shed. Quick question for you. Taking labels off jars, I want to use them for screws, nuts and bolts. I want to screw the lid up to the other side of the shelf and then screw the jar up to it. Got a few ideas to get the labels off already, like probably white spirits, oil, bicarb, that sort of thing. Already soaked them in hot water, did absolutely nothing because this glue is like tar. I'm sure Reggie, if you're watching, you might have a few comments. Yeah, so I'm just putting the question out there if anyone knows. Oh, by the way, about me cast off, which I'm really pleased about. I can get on with things now. It's a nice weekend here in the UK, beautiful sunshine. So I've got loads to do in the garden, so I'm gonna get cracking with that. And then later on in the weekend, I'm gonna, or maybe in the week, I'm gonna fix these jars up. So any suggestions, stick them in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.
Soak them in hot soapy water, Rob. That's what we do. Just soak them in hot soapy water. There's a quick answer video to Rob. Rob is thinking about taking the labels off and hanging jars off the top. And the problem is, Rob, they tend to get stuck. And when they tend to get stuck, you can't grip them. It'll take too much space up. You can't get... The idea is good, but you can't, you've got to get your hand around them to turn them. And what happens is, this is what happens with them, see? They get a bit stuck, they get a bit jammed, you know, because they've been there a while. And you just simply, you'll have to think about doing long ones and short ones and long ones. And they're up against the wall here. So you can't get your fingers behind them. Unless you get a big inefficient gap, like that is an inefficient gap, you can't get. So I don't recommend, obviously this is my first attempt when I first started. This is a genesis of collecting nuts and bolts, shall we say. I got it, I kept it, I hung it up. But the problem you have is it's a good idea, but you can't get your hand, you take too much space up just getting your hand around each jar, because they'll tend to tighten up on themselves with age, and you can't get them flush up against the wall. So yeah, it looks nice, it's good, but you're going to waste too much space. First of all, behind them, try and get your fingers behind to give them a tug. And you've got the danger then of, if you're holding this very tightly and the jar breaks in your hand, you've just sliced your finger off, haven't you? There's always that danger, you know. You've got a particularly tight one and you're squeezing and pulling. Now when you've got a lid, you can put a tool on the lid and take the lid off. You can even hold this in a towel or something to give yourself grip. But you know, if you put gloves on to protect your hand, you need an even bigger space. So hanging jars off shelves is not a good idea. It's inefficient. Yeah, think again, back to the drawing board, Rob. Anyway, that's well lit up, isn't it? Do you think, well, the reason it's well lit up, look, this is my angle poise lamp that I made. Just if you're working in this corner and on this vise, it's got a dedicated little angle poise lamp. You can move and twist and do whatever. And the little switch is up there, look, which switches it off. Anyway, I hope that answers your question, Rob. Thank you for asking it. I feel your pain with labels on jars. I really do. So if they're going to come off, they're going to come off. But you'll notice some of the jars have labels. So what I do is I just turn the jar sideways so you can see. Not many of them have the label all the way around. They'll be just glued in a certain spot. And you generally rip the label off and it'll just lose the groove bit. So what I tend to do is stick the bit that I can get the label off out, or leave the label on. Same for some of the places. Sometimes if the label comes off, great. If the label doesn't come off, you've just got to work around it. You've just got to live with it, as you might say. Yeah. These, for instance, these are all right. These labels are stuck all the way around. Now, the labels before comes off quite easy. It's part of choosing what jar you're going to use. So what I tend to do is, I'll show you, hold on. Do this, look. That one, that's a good candidate to go on a shelf when I'm making shelves. But generally you'll find all the crummy lid labels, we'll call this the crummy label jar. Well, all the crummy label jars tend to be lid on top. I swap them out. Swap them out, look. These are all the bad labels. So we go bad labels. Sometimes when I'm short of a jar, what I'll do is say, for instance now, this, we picked this up, didn't we? I picked this up and I think, oh, that's a nice jar. That's a nice jar for the shelf. So what I'll do then is I'll grab me a crummy label jar, because I keep these in a slightly different, these are ones with it on top, so that if it's got a bad label it doesn't matter. So you use, you know, crummy label parts go on top and store them that way, you know. Or if you've got a nice clean label jar, then that's worthy to go on a shelf, isn't it? And you just, you know, just work with them. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. Just the way they're, obviously they must have had plenty of glue on that one, or it come off a different machine, or came out of a different factory or something. Do you know what I mean? They do change the way they do things. So that's how you just gotta, you've got a problem, you've got to live with it, haven't you? See that one? That's a candidate to rob that for a shelf. So, because you're always constantly changing and adding and taking to and moving your jars about, and what you put in a jar doesn't always stay in that same jar, because you've got something else to do with it. See this now? Look, I've kept the labels on it, or it got washed and the labels never came off. Or just turn the jar sideways, because it's the same job. It don't aggravate you the same, innit? You adapt to what you've got. This is a coffee jar, but this had like a plastic label that came off easily. So if you notice, I use that jar a lot. If you're collecting coffee jars and it means you've got to just change the make of your coffee because the other coffee is a better jar, be careful what you buy and say, right, I don't want that coffee, I want this coffee. Same as this. This is that. They stopped making these tea granules, that's why I've got so many of them. But you know, you've got to tell the missus, don't buy that jar, the label's difficult to get off, buy this jar. It's only change your coffee, change your make of whatever you do. Yeah, but the better ones are these black ones. This is a coffee, that's a coffee jar. So when you go shopping, have a look at the labels, and we'll have that, love. We like it. I love it. I love it because it's easy to get the label off and I can scrounge the jar when you're done with it. Who remembers this one? It's got to be
18 months,
2 years ago.
Huddersfield one?
Yeah, we went all over. We did a right round trip, didn't we?
Huddersfield.
We got the red one with the Indian paint job and the tassels. Yeah. So you see, look, it's a pretend hardtail because the suspension's hidden up there with it. And this is the unusual one because they've got the chrome case.
That's it, yeah.
They're usually blacked out. You don't see many of these chromed up. And it's just had its MOT. Look. It's chain drive, look. Yeah. Wow. Look. Quite light, 800cc. Lovely thing. And it's just so, we went to fetch it. That's a Nick's touch.
So you went on the team box and he told me, he said, I can't do it. I said, what I'll do? He said, I'll send you up the road. come up tomorrow, I'll send it.
It's a beauty. Who remembers? Now up and running.
Log set the pup out, can you come back in the bed, 2 hours?
Up and running.